When a man carries himself with true composure, with quiet confidence and calm awareness, something in that energy leaves a mark that no woman can ever fully erase. It's not about what he said or how much attention he gave. It's about the emotional imprint he left behind. Most men chase affection, overthink every word, and let their emotions lead them. But a man grounded in his own presence is different. He doesn't need to prove himself or compete for attention because he knows his worth. And when a woman meets that kind of man, whether she realizes it or not, his energy plants itself deeply in her subconscious. Even when she walks away, even when she tries to move on, she feels the echo of what she once had but didn't truly understand. What she misses is not the man himself, but how she felt around him. That's the power of emotional imprint. A man who stands still while everyone else chases, who remains calm when others crumble, becomes unforgettable. He becomes the one she remembers late at night when her heart feels restless. She might not say it out loud. She might even pretend she's over it. But something inside her compares every new person to him. The way he made her feel safe without suffocating her, how he made her laugh without trying too hard, and how his silence spoke louder than anyone's attention. That's not love fading, that's memory holding on to presence. Women often underestimate emotional energy. They think attraction comes from words, appearance, or effort, but the truth is deeper. It comes from how a man makes her feel without even trying. A man who has mastered his emotions, who moves with intention and calmness, doesn't beg for validation. He doesn't chase her approval because his value isn't dependent on her recognition. That detachment doesn't push her away. It pulls her in. She starts to question why he's so peaceful, why he doesn't react, why he doesn't seek her the way others do. And that curiosity grows into fascination. It's a paradox most people don't understand. The less you try to be remembered, the harder you are to forget. When a man truly knows himself, his silence carries power. His absence is not emptiness. It's presence felt in a different way. Women can sense that. They sense when a man isn't desperate for control or attention. They sense when he's capable of walking away without resentment because he doesn't need to hold on to something that doesn't serve his peace. That calm, detached strength burns itself into her memory. It teaches her something about true masculinity. Quiet confidence doesn't beg to be seen. It simply exists, and that existence becomes unforgettable. In the end, it's not the loud gestures or passionate words that stay with her. It's the feeling of being in the presence of someone who didn't need her to feel complete. That emotional imprint is what lingers long after he's gone because some energy simply cannot be replaced. When a woman pretends she's moved on acting distant or indifferent, it often isn't because she's truly detached. It's because she's testing something deeper. She's testing whether your peace depends on her presence. When a man starts pulling away or stops giving the same attention, many women feel a subtle discomfort. They may not show it, but something inside them shifts. They begin to sense that the control they once had, the emotional influence over your mood, your thoughts, your focus is fading. And when that happens, their ego resists the loss. It's not always about love or deep connection. Sometimes it's simply about power. People, by nature, want to feel desired, and when that desire no longer revolves around them, it unsettles them. This is why a woman who once seemed uninterested suddenly starts showing small signs of attention when you stop trying. Maybe she watches your stories again. Maybe she texts after weeks of silence. Maybe she just finds subtle ways to be noticed. It's not coincidence, it's emotional gravity. When a man withdraws his attention, the balance of energy changes. You see, attention is a form of power. When you give too much of it away, you weaken your own energy. But when you hold it, when you reserve it for yourself, it creates curiosity. That curiosity turns into wonder. Why isn't he chasing anymore? Did he find someone else? Was I wrong about him? These quiet questions echo in her mind, and that's when the shift happens. What most men fail to understand is that detachment doesn't mean bitterness or games. It means peace. It means learning to no longer feed what drains you. You stop reacting not out of pride, but out of maturity. You realize that not everyone deserves your emotional access, and this calm withdrawal has a profound effect. It makes her feel the absence of your energy, because true emotional strength isn't shown in how hard you hold on. It's shown in how gracefully you can let go. That's what creates value in her eyes. Women are drawn to energy that doesn't cling. They might not admit it, but they respect it. A man who doesn't chase after rejection becomes mysterious. He becomes a question mark in her mind, a puzzle she didn't solve, and that's powerful. She starts replaying moments, wondering what she missed. Was she too quick to dismiss him? Did she underestimate his worth? Did she mistake calm confidence for disinterest? The more she wonders, the more her own emotions start to chase him. So when she pretends not to care, the best response isn't to prove your worth, it's to remain still. Because when you stop giving her your energy, she begins to feel the silence. And that silence speaks louder than any message you could ever send. The moment you stop trying to convince her of your value is the moment she starts realizing it herself. There comes a point when you realize that reacting to her indifference only feeds the illusion that she holds the power. When she acts like she doesn't care, the natural instinct is to chase, to prove your worth, to remind her of what she's losing. But that only deepens the imbalance. The truth is, the more energy you give to someone who withholds theirs, the more you drain your own strength. The only real way to shift the dynamic is to detach, not as a tactic, but as a reflection of genuine peace within yourself. A Stoic man understands that emotions are not meant to control him. They're meant to teach him. When a woman pretends not to care, she's not your enemy. She's simply showing you a mirror of where your validation lies. If her coldness can disturb your peace, it means your peace was never truly yours to begin with. The greatest mistake a man makes in these moments is believing he needs to convince her of his value. You don't need to explain, argue, or prove anything. Your silence becomes your strength. Your calm becomes your armor. You respond not with frustration, but with composure. Because when you are unshaken, when you can remain kind but distant, respectful but firm, it speaks volumes. She begins to notice that her indifference no longer holds weight. She expected you to chase, to question, to break, but instead you stand still, grounded in your sense of worth. That calm confidence disrupts her expectations, and in that disruption, she feels something unfamiliar: respect. This is where most men misunderstand the power of emotional restraint. It's not about manipulation or games, it's about self-respect. You learn to let her play her games alone. You stop responding to mixed signals. You stop chasing validation. Because real attraction doesn't come from pursuit. It comes from presence. When you can walk away without anger, when you can continue to live fully without needing her to notice, you communicate something far deeper than words ever could. You show her that your world doesn't revolve around her approval. And ironically, that's when curiosity begins to grow in her mind. She starts to question how you've moved on so easily, how you've become so composed, while she's still wondering what went wrong. The energy shifts. The moment she realizes she no longer has emotional control, she begins to feel the loss, and that's the power of detachment. It creates space for reflection. She may not admit it, but your absence becomes louder than your presence ever was. So when she pretends not to care, don't lower yourself to match that energy. Don't argue, don't plead, and don't chase what's walking away. Instead, hold your peace, because that's what truly separates the strong from the needy. The calm man wins not because he plays harder, but because he no longer plays at all. And that quiet confidence is what makes her finally see what she tried to ignore: the worth of a man who never begged to be seen. When you finally stop reacting to her emotional games, something powerful begins to shift. A woman who once felt like she could control your emotions through silence, distance, or mixed signals suddenly realizes she no longer has that power. You've taken your energy back. You've stopped being predictable. You no longer rush to text her when she pulls away or seek explanations when she becomes distant. Instead, you respond with stillness, with quiet confidence. This is the point where she starts to question everything she once believed about you. She begins to see that your attention was never something she could take for granted. It was something you allowed her to have, and now it's gone. A stoic man knows that detachment doesn't mean not caring, it means caring correctly. You don't give your emotions to situations that don't serve your peace. You understand that people who play games are often testing their own insecurities, not your value. When she sees that you no longer dance to her rhythm, she starts to feel the void her actions created. The silence you give her becomes louder than any words you could speak. That silence becomes the reflection of her own choices. She starts to notice that she's losing access to something rare: a man who was patient, loyal, and grounded. And when she realizes that your energy is no longer revolving around her, it begins to disturb her peace instead of yours. This shift isn't about revenge or proving a point. It's about regaining control over your emotions. You no longer operate from a place of need, but from self-respect. You stop seeking closure from her because you understand that closure is something you give yourself. You no longer try to explain your worth because your actions already show it. You invest your energy into growth, discipline, and purpose instead of emotional chaos. That's when life begins to align again. The people who are meant to stay in your life will respect your boundaries, not test them. When you act from emotional stability, it creates a quiet power that others can feel. She starts noticing that your focus has shifted. You've begun to glow differently. You've become more composed, more focused, more at peace. She might not say it, but she feels it. The woman who once tried to make you chase her now wonders why you're not trying anymore. That's the paradox of attraction. When you stop seeking it, it often finds its way back to you. But by then, you've grown beyond the need for her validation. The lesson is simple: never let someone's inconsistency dictate your peace. Don't respond to manipulation with emotion. Respond with silence, purpose, and strength. The moment you master that, the game ends. Because a man who knows his worth doesn't need to chase recognition. His calm presence speaks for itself. And when she realizes she can't shake your peace anymore, that's when she finally sees what she lost: a man who could never truly be replaced. When you focus on improving yourself instead of trying to win her back, everything starts to change. The energy that was once spent analyzing her behavior, checking her messages, or wondering what she feels is now redirected into building yourself into someone stronger, wiser, and more composed. This transformation is not about making her jealous or trying to prove anything to her. It's about reclaiming your power, your peace, and your purpose. When a man begins to truly focus on his growth, mentally, physically creates a presence that can't be ignored. Women, by nature, are drawn to progress, to motion, to self-assured energy. When you stop chasing her and start chasing your own potential, she starts to feel the loss in a way words could never express. Every hour you used to spend worrying about her is now spent developing discipline, reading, training, and building your purpose. You become more centered, more confident, and more detached from emotional drama. You start radiating stability, the kind that can't be faked. And ironically, that's when she starts to wonder what changed. The same woman who once thought she could predict your next move now sees you as a mystery again. You've stepped out of her control and into your own world. This shift unsettles her because she realizes that your attention, once freely given, now has to be earned. You've become the man she thought she could easily replace, but now she understands that your absence leaves a void she can't fill with anyone else. A Stoic man understands that the best response to loss is improvement. He doesn't chase validation, he builds it within. He knows that peace comes not from clinging to people, but from mastering himself. When you stop trying to control outcomes, you start controlling your reactions. That's true power. The more you detach from her emotionally, the more you reconnect with your sense of direction. You no longer define your worth through her opinion, but through your own growth. This mindset not only elevates your confidence, but also makes you far more attractive, because true strength is magnetic. As you evolve, she begins to see a version of you that's no longer emotionally dependent. You're not reacting, not explaining, not proving. You're just becoming. You move in silence, your actions speak, and your presence commands respect without saying a word. This transformation becomes impossible for her to ignore. She starts to replay the moments she took for granted, realizing too late that the man she pushed away is no longer the same. You've become untouchable, not because you don't care, but because you've learned to care correctly. And when she sees that your world no longer revolves around her, but around your purpose, that's when she finally understands your worth. That's when regret hits her, not because you left, but because you grew beyond her reach. And that realization is more powerful than anything you could ever say. There comes a moment when silence speaks louder than any words you could say. When you stop trying to explain, stop defending, stop proving your worth to someone who once made you feel unseen, that's when everything changes. You see, the most powerful thing a man can do is to walk away with peace in his heart and purpose in his mind. It's not anger, not revenge, not ego, it's clarity. You understand that chasing someone who doesn't value your presence only teaches them that they can take you for granted. But when you step back and choose yourself, it forces her to see you differently. She begins to feel the weight of your absence. The noise of her world fades a little, and suddenly, the silence you left behind becomes too loud to ignore. When you stop trying to make her care, she starts to wonder why. When you no longer respond instantly, no longer show visible emotion, no longer feed the drama, she starts to feel uncertain. The control she once had over your emotions slips away, and that unsettles her. That's because emotional detachment from a man who once cared deeply is something women don't expect. They mistake your silence for weakness, but in time, they realize it's strength, the kind that can't be manipulated. You are no longer driven by reaction, but by reflection. And that shift changes the dynamic completely. The truth is, your silence forces her to face her own choices. It's easy for her to ignore you when you're constantly available, constantly expressing, constantly reminding her that you care. But when you remove that energy, when you detach with grace, it leaves her with nothing to resist, nothing to fight, nothing to feed off. She's left alone with her thoughts, her ego, her decisions. And that's when the realization sets in. She begins to remember your patience, your presence, your consistency. What once felt ordinary to her now feels rare. What once felt secure now feels lost. A Stoic man understands that silence is not the absence of care, it's the presence of discipline. You're not withholding communication to manipulate, you're doing it to heal. You're choosing peace over chaos, dignity over validation. This composure makes her see you through a different lens, not as the man who once chased, but as the man who can't be easily replaced. Your restraint becomes your power. While she expected you to react, you responded with stillness. While she tried to trigger emotion, you met her with calm. And in that balance, you reclaim something she never expected you to take back. Your control. Over time, she begins to wonder if you've truly moved on, if you've forgotten her, or if you simply no longer care. And the truth that haunts her most is this: you didn't stop caring, you just stopped trying. You grew beyond needing her validation, and that quiet growth speaks louder than anything you could have ever said.